Hi again, everybody. I'm Kraig Kann. Right now, on this edition of Tracks to Success, meet a man with a sideline view in the NFL. He's not a player, but every player needs him. He's the director of player health and performance for the Detroit Lions, overseeing every single aspect of the team's medical operation. And he's a businessman as well, founder and owner of his own performance training and rehab center for the best professional athletes in the world. His name is Brett Fischer. His inspiring story of success starts now.
Welcome to Tracks to Success. This is the podcast that brings you inspiring people and their inspiring stories, how they found their way to the top, and how their path can help you do the same. Here's your host, network broadcaster, C-suite executive, best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur, Kraig Kann.
This is an absolute pleasure. Brett Fischer, great to be with you. Welcome to Tracks to Success. How you doing?
I am doing great, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it is totally my pleasure. I want to get right into this. I want to start with an NFL game, and we're going to work through a whole lot of different things. Now, these guys, these incredible athletes, they're split seconds away from glory or something that could go wrong physically that could basically put their career in jeopardy just like that. Is that nerve-wracking to a guy like you with your background and your job and your responsibility?
You know, it really is. And it's amazing to me, after being on the sidelines for so many years, the violence, the speed, the hitting that occurs, and there's not more injuries because the amount of forces that go through. You'll see me oftentimes behind the play, not in front of it, because every season people get hurt on the sidelines being there because these players run full speed and they can't stop. And the force that comes through there, I've caught a few of those and it hurt. So now I'm smarter and I get out of the way. And coaches always laugh like, "Fish, we saw you on there getting out." I said, "Yes, I saw the play developing. I got out of the way." So it is amazing, but it's amazing how well they prepare. And considering how much trauma they do have in one game, the injuries aren't more. And it's a tribute to sports science and where we've come in our profession.
Okay, so I'm going to follow that up. Does that worry you? I mean, we know how great of athletes they are. We know how fast they run now. We know how big they are and how fast they can run. So collisions are, like a car wreck every single time. It's got to be frightening.
It's definitely a motor vehicle accident every Sunday. But to see what we try and do is keep up with the science so we can hopefully keep pace with the game itself, because now you have offensive linemen who run under a 5.0 second 40-yard dash. And it's incredible to see men run at 6'7" at 4'9". So it's concerning, but I'm hoping that we stay on top of the sports science and keep track and keep in tune with where they're going with their lives, because it could be devastating if we fall behind medically from these guys.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the medical aspect of it. You spent a few minutes just a second ago talking about the sideline. Do you pinch yourself that you're on an NFL sideline? And I'm going to go back into your career and how we got there in just a minute. But do you pinch yourself sometimes and say, "Wow, this is where I am"?
Oh yeah. Every national anthem, it's always an emotional moment for me. I'm very thankful just for that moment to be there, and I don't take it for granted. And I think about all the things. My dad did take me to the vet down in South Philly to see the Eagles, Redskins every year, and the Flyers and the Phillies and all these different things, and how he instilled those things in my life. But my family, who is always there for me to support me and say, "Hey, we're a blue collar family from Philadelphia, but if you dream, you can one day be there." I was never a good enough athlete to play on the field, but I said, "What can I do to be around that?" And I'm so thankful that I had an upbringing where, I was allowed to dream. And that kind of helped me.
Director of Player Health and Performance. That's the title. That's what it would say on the business card or on the door going into your office, overseeing all aspects of the team's medical operation. So you're kind of like the CEO of health for the Detroit Lions. That's how I look at it in a way. You're not performing surgery, But if I got that right, you're overseeing everything.
Yeah, so we oversee the doctors and the trainers, but I'm more of a facilitator, make sure everything's moving correctly, that the rehabs are going correctly. I try to let my staff be who they are. The head athletic trainer goes out on the field, takes care of those, but I'm right next to them to kind of relay the information to the coaches and things like that and upstairs. But my job is to provide an environment for my staff to really succeed. And then my other job is to really work with the performance staff next door in the weight room to make sure that we're all on the same page. And at the same token, I'm also responsible for getting information to our head coaches and our coaches and our administration on an hourly or daily basis to make sure everybody's on the same page, because it's super fast in the NFL, getting players in and out here, flying in for workouts, free agents, and things like that. So we have to be on top of our game. But it's funny, like I look back in my life and I just think about all the experiences that I had coming up to this has led me to this job to prepare me for this. And I'm so thankful for the people in my life that, when I started back in Philadelphia to where I am now, I can literally say I stand on the shoulders of giants, and that
Mm.
so many mentors in my life put nuggets into me. And now I'm actually utilizing every little aspect of those things, even back to high school, of things that people taught me to be to this job.
So you said you weren't great as an athlete, but you played sports, I'm sure. Let's go back in time, your childhood,
Yeah.
and where was home? You talked about Philly and all of that. Were you interested in sports? Were you interested in medicine and health back then?
Yeah. Sports has always been my life 24/7. In Philadelphia is one of those cities like Boston where you can go to someone's house and the Phillies game is on the radio or on the TV, and you go to the next house, it's the same thing on the TV. Everywhere you go, you can hear the game and everybody knows what the game score is. And you grew up with sports being a part of your life.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate I think I was 14 years old. I worked at a health club in outside of Philadelphia, and it was like a bare bones. It was a bunch of bodybuilders and guys just getting lifted, but it actually taught me how to understand the body anatomy, what happens to the body. So at 14 years old, I had this interest in helping people perform better, and I love
Mm.
sports. And then before I knew it, by the time I was 16, I knew what I wanted to do.
Mm.
So when people say I don't know what I want to do, they go, "Well, how'd you figure it out?" I always say it just happened for me. But looking back on it, now I know some of the reasons why I do what I do. But it was so fortunate to have those experiences. The man was Larry Surge. He opened his health club and gave me responsibilities at a young age that I think have, propelled me to where I am now.
Who inspired you, Brett? Who was the person, whether it be mom, dad, somebody in the family, somebody outside the family? I mean, 16 to know what you wanted to do. I'm one of those guys who knew what I wanted to do at 7 and 8. And I had folks who inspired me. Who inspired you?
My family to dream. Uh,
Mm.
you know, I have one of those childhoods where I had both grandparents, I had uncles and aunts. I had my mom and dad who all worked hard. I think they all inspired me. They all said, dream, dream. Don't let anyone ever talk you out of it. So there was not one particular person, but as I look in my career, every step of the way, I really believe God had put people in my life to be that mentor for me as we went to different steps. And it's amazing to how many mentors I've had over the years. And actually, on our NFL bye week, one of the trainers, Chris Patrick at the University of Florida, who's going to be honored here at the state of Florida in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to go back on our bye week to go to the University of Florida UCF game just to pay respect to him and tell him how much I appreciate him. Just because he, at 18 years old, as a freshman on the campus of University of Florida, he directed my life in a way that, I'm so thankful for. And it's funny, like every step of my way, there's always been people there that have been placed to kind of keep directing me. And I
Mm.
mean, I feel so fortunate. I feel like Lou Gehrig when he gave that speech at Yankee Stadium. Today I consider myself. That's how I feel sometimes. I feel so blessed looking back on the people who have impacted my life.
It's interesting, Brett. You mentioned UCF Florida. The bounce house is crazy in Orlando. The swamp is as loud as it gets when the Gators are playing well. And if they're not playing well, it can be pretty loud too. And now you're Ford Field, and Ford Field used to be a little bit quiet. I covered the Lions for 4 years earlier in my career, back in the Wayne Fonts was the coach days. And Ford Field, that's a loud place right now. I want to take you through that. You've worked with the Arizona Cardinals, the Jets. professional golfers, PGA Tour, LPGA, Senior PGA Tour, and the Cubs. That's on your resume. And you just mentioned the journey. At each one of those stops, I'm wondering what it was you tried to take from each of those that built your career. Because I talk about that a lot about, can you remember the defining moment in each job you had? Can you remember who mentored you? Can you remember the impact you made? Can you remember the impact somebody made on you? And when you leave, can you remember exactly what your legacy would be? In other words, what tangible difference did you make during that stop? How did you grow through all those stops?
Well, like I said before, I had such important mentors who were so vision driven, and to take the time in their busy lives to take a young kid each step of the way to kind of impart wisdom into them. Like I said, Chris Patrick of Florida, there was a man named Jim Russ that was there. And he said to me, why don't you become a physical therapist and an athletic trainer? Now, he went on to be the longtime trainer of Notre Dame football for many, many years. And I always thank him for doing that. And then he directed me to physical therapy school. He also got me into summer internship with the New York Jets. I was the youngest one ever to go in the NFL at the time. I was 18 and a half years old. I'm working with the New York Jets in 1984 to get some NFL experience with Pepper Burris, who became then the longtime trainer of the Green Bay Packers. And everyone has their own way of imparting in my life. And I'm kind of like a mixed bag of spices, I think, over the years. And then, it led to me to meet a guy named Gary Gray, who was probably the biggest name in physical therapy, who mentored me on how to look at the body. It's just every step of the way, it's just been one more after another. And just, there was not one set plan for that. It's just the way it evolved. And I always try and take the next step and why we're doing what we're doing. And I think looking back on it, though, Craig, it's just number one, now that I look back on it, I always tell people, look at your gifts. Like, what are you good at? What motivates you? And what's going to lead you that way? And then for me, I think the biggest thing for me is developing your why. To be successful for me, you need to know why you get up in the morning. It's not about money. It's not about fame or success. If you're truly driven, it's something deep inside which gets you up in the morning. And every time I went through each of these steps along my way, I want to know what drove them, what made you successful. And I learned from them and what they did, and they imparted how they got there. I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So that's kind of how I did that.
Do you know what your superpower is?
What do you mean by that?
The greatest gift, strength, asset that you bring to the table that differentiates you from others who do the same thing. Why the Lions can't basically go on without you because you bring something to the table that they need.
I always say, if you want to be the top of what you do, you have to be able to do the 1% that nobody else wants to do. And I think that comes from caring on people. I think my biggest power would be emotional intelligence. People say, well, there's all this science behind healthcare. And yes, you do need to know the anatomy and physiology and what you're doing. But I think it's the human connection that you make with everyone that you're with to allow them to express themselves, what's wrong with them, how we're going to get better, to create a team atmosphere for each individual athlete, and to have them trust you enough in their career to do the things we need to do. Now, granted, you need to be on top of your game medically, but I think people fall short. It's not just what you know, it's how you do your things and how you relate to people and how we're going to progress this. And I think asking the right questions to the patients as well and the athletes is probably my biggest superpower, in that I'm able to get to the gist of what people are really motivated by, and then use their motivation to help them reach their goals.
I've got 3 kids. I have twins and girl, boy. My daughter, who just got married, is a NICU nurse. My son, her twin brother, is a PA in neurosurgery. And one of the gifts that they each have is a sense of calm and a nurturing gift to be able to go through something that could be stressful for a family or for a patient and deal with that. Now, we talked about Ford Field. It's loud in there. So this is a 2-part question, really. Do you hear the loud? And then on Monday morning, after all the loud, right, and all the collisions and the physical trauma, you use the word trauma, how do you maintain calm? What's a Monday like?
Number one, I don't hear the loudness. My wife and my mother-in-law, my son and his girlfriend went to the game, and they had to wear earplugs. It was so loud for them. I didn't, but then after the game, I had no voice. So I go, I
Mm.
guess I was talking loud all day because I quit, my voice is gone. So I didn't realize that. So I don't recognize that. I think under the pressure situation, I always go back to the process. I go back to the basics. And I totally forget about the crowd. I focus on the person who's hurt and what have I been trained to do. And I just follow those processes because that's my time to be calm inside. And my calmness comes from being prepared and being prepared with our staff. We we prepare for emergency situations quite often. We bring a company in to Detroit that recreates different scenarios where we started talking that we just started and someone came in yelling that someone's down, and it was an actor who had overdosed on drugs. It was a fan at our practice. Now it's all make believe, but we didn't know what was going to happen. We had to go react to it. So we have scenarios that recreate these things, and we try to practice emergency situations. I think the more that you practice these things, the more you go, I understand what I'm doing. I think afterwards, after the game, you start going, oh wow, that did happen. And then you go, wow, I should have been nervous, but in the time it happens, you're not because you've been working on that so many times.
A quick minute to welcome a partner to the podcast and tell you about a great deal just for you. Here's a question. Do you wear hats? Of course you do. Then you need to know about Ahead. Ahead doesn't follow the trends, they set them, providing the best in headwear, styles, fabrications, and ornamentations for 25 years. And by listening to this podcast, you get a chance to save big. Visit aheadusashop.com and use the code TTS, that's Tracks to Success, to receive 20% off your order. That's aheadusashop.com. Use the exclusive code TTS, 20% off, just for listening. We're talking with Brett Fischer, Director of Player Health and Performance for the Detroit Lions. He's in the NFL. There are a lot of people that would love to be in the NFL. It's not an easy road. It wasn't an easy road for you. What's the toughest thing about finding your way in your field? What's been your biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge is, that's a good question. And I think it's not be afraid to fail. I mean, you just got to keep trying and everybody needs to understand that a career path isn't always straight up. It's up and down and here and there. And I believe there's sometimes that we get situations where we think it's horrible for us, but it's actually good. For example, I was at the Chicago Cubs for 3 seasons. We had some amazing players, Greg Maddux, Andre Dawson, Mark Grace, Ryan Sandberg. And we lost a lot of games. Well, guess what? They fired the manager, they fired the GM, and guess what? Brett Fischer got fired. I didn't do anything really wrong. We just didn't win games. So for me at the time, I was young. I was probably 30 years old. It was pretty devastating for a while. And I had people around me say, hey, you know what? Use this time. And I didn't understand what they meant. And I spent 2 years at a company in Phoenix, Arizona, where my house was, that wasn't ideal. And at the time, it was kind of horrible. But I learned not what to do, but I learned about myself. And I learned about humility. That's not about who you treat, but why you do what you do. And I really became even stronger in my why on why I do what I do. And I think that recalibrated me to my next level. So I'm really looking back on my career. I'm thankful for the downstroke or something that happened, which I thought was negative, because it made me better. And I think I tell people all the time, don't be discouraged by the small things. It's the process of what you got to do. You got to love the process, and process meaning what you do every day, all the decisions you make. And I think that's the part that people need to understand. That's probably the hardest part, is getting up early at 4 o'clock every day. But people don't see that. They only see Sundays. But if you love what you do and you know your why, you will do those things. And I think the people who know that sooner rather than later get on that track to success quicker.
In addition to hosting this podcast, Kraig leads the Kann Advisory Group, focused on elevating communication for companies and individuals. Company consulting, team and individual workshops, mind-altering virtual programs. To learn more and to find out why the Elevate workshop has been labeled the most powerful experience in leadership communication, Visit canadvisory.com. And when you do connect, mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive your special discount. Now, back to the interview.
Good job with the promo right there. I really appreciate that. Let's talk about the Fischer Institute. All right. For those watching, listening, yes, Brett's in Detroit, but Brett's got something that's pretty special in Arizona. And I've been there, I've seen it, training and working with athletes on a regular basis and all of that. Running a business, not easy. I don't know how you do two things like that at one time. What made you want to be an entrepreneur, and how big has that been in your career?
It was my wife's idea.
Really?
She told me we need to do this. And, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay in sports, but every offer that came in was just way below what I thought I should be making. And I said, okay. And the minute I decided to do that, God had opened so many doors for me. It was amazing. And my success at that facility just exploded. My wife was the big part of that. And it really opened a whole other avenue for me looking back on 24 years at the Fischer Institute. People coming through there, which I never thought would happen. I had Cy Young Award winners like Randy Johnson, Maria Sharapova, Roger Federer, Terrell Davis, and all these people. And they all came. And my wife said, if you build it, they will come, like Field of Dreams. And here we are in South Phoenix, and then people are just coming in from all over, from Japan and different places. So it was an amazing 24 years of doing that, but it wasn't this grand plan that I had. I mean it. It was my wife's vision that she kind of imparted to me, and we kind of took off on it. The fun part for me was halfway through that journey, I was able to be with the Arizona Cardinals for 15 seasons and still run the clinic. And like I said, I couldn't do it without my wife, who's been my rock, to be there for all those different things. And that's been a big part of my success, is my wife being there, supporting you, encouraging you, and kind of directing you and keeping you humble.
Yeah. Family is so big. I know it's super big for you. It's big for me. I think that's what helps keep us not just grounded, but motivated. And you talk about the why, and it goes to family so often. And I'm guessing that the athletes to you are family. They have to feel like family. How are they wired? What do you see in them when they get hurt, and how do you help them bounce back, not physically, but mentally as well? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I wasn't a PGA Tour. Back before the internet, I would try and get every golf magazine and try and read about Ian Woosman, about Nick Faldo, Seve Ballesteros, people that I would work with, but I want to know their life. Even though I would talk to them, it's during a tournament time. I may not have all the time that I need, but I try to get them to see where they came from, how they think, and develop those relationships. I do that right away here at the Lions. I try and get to know these players as best I can, to understand what their motivation is, what they feel like. It just allows you to have that emotional intelligence to kind of say the things you need to say in the way that they will understand, not the way I understand it, but the way they understand it. So I really try to focus on that part of it with every single player.
You don't have to tell me about a specific name of a player, but I want you to take me through a scenario where there was physical trauma on a Sunday, guys out for the year or something fairly devastating, and the process immediately begins for them to hopefully be able to rehab and come back in the NFL, which is hard enough to get there in the first place. Their dreams crash, however they might feel. What's that like for you? And tell me about something that's happened that you've seen that you're just like, wow.
These are great questions. I think for me, I'm usually honored by the fact that they called me to say, hey, would you help me at the lowest part of my life get back to where I was? I think, first of all, I'm humbled by that. It's a huge responsibility. And I've always taken the approach of, I don't have all the answers. So I'm going to get as much information about that person emotionally, their physical, and even talk to experts who may have worked with them before to say, hey, how have they responded with this or that? What do they like? What they don't like? So I can at least start from a process that. And then I start making progress with the surgeon, probably, if they had surgery. What do they see and how are they going to do it? And then I have my own philosophies. So when they come in there, I'm prepared. But I'm also looking at their nutrition. I'm looking at their sports psychology part of it. So when they come to me, they go, oh, wow, okay, he's thought about all these things for me. And I try and make sure that that relationship is even stronger going through it. I get those phone calls sometimes, where a player's even crying on the phone, and I can barely understand who it is, and I know them, and they've gone through something significant. But like I said, it's that humbles me that they've reached out in that time in their life. And I feel a huge responsibility. I mean, a huge responsibility. I lose sleep over sometimes some things. Um, 2 in the morning, I'm writing notes down of things I should be doing with them. They come in dreams sometimes, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking things while I'm driving the car, and I take notes. Um, I kind of wrap my life into their life in a lot of ways to really indulge my life into that. And I always say my goal is never to bring you back to where you were. My goal is to bring you back better. And
Mm.
at first, they look at me like, "Yeah, you're just saying that." But when we look back on it, we do things they probably didn't do in their training, like balance training or vision training or certain things to make them even better. But that's kind of how I approach those situations.
Dan Campbell's the coach of the Lions. Seems like an incredible motivator, uh, a guy that is a guy's guy that players want to be around. You're a leader as well. What do you learn from him? How often do you all even talk?
I talk to him every day. I meet with him privately every day. He's one of the most amazing men I've ever been around in my whole life. His emotional intelligence and knowing what he wants to do, what others want to do, how we're going to do it, how we're going to talk to the players, how we're going to respond. It's just I go home every night and tell my wife, this is an incredible man. And I feel so fortunate to work with him. And I really mean that. He is everything that you see. Even his commercials you see he's doing now, they're really funny. That's his humor. And I really thank him just every day how much he does. And he values others' opinions. He wants to hear your opinion. He's probably the most dynamic coach I've ever been around from that standpoint. And once again, he cares more about these players than you'll ever imagine. Every little thing about their lives, and it's fun to be around him. He motivates me. And even his speeches after practice, I get chills sometimes listening to him.
Mhm.
He gets me fired up. He has a gift to communicate that I've not seen in a way that just it gets to the core. And what's amazing for me, I do work with hockey players over the years and other sports. I get so many texts all the time from baseball players, hockey players going, "Man, I would love to play for your coach." And they just see it. And he's really what you see on TV is really how he is. And it's a joy. Like I said, he responds, he listens, he's humble. Yeah, I couldn't ask for a better person to work for.
Is there a player, an NFL player, who's made you better
Mm.
at your job and a better human being by
Mm.
being around him? A player or two that stand out that we would say, oh, I know who that is.
Well, I think baseball wise was Kerry Wood.
Hmm.
He had a unique injury that made me so much better as a physical therapist, but it also made me a better person. Just see his patience and his loyalty and believing in me. I felt a huge responsibility, and we're still close friends. And that's the fun part of my business is staying close with them. But he made me a better person as well. Carson Palmer was another one who made me a better person as well. Um, Seeing how he attacked his day every day. Andre Dawson was another one.
Hmm.
I was young at the time, and he would have me work on him at the exact like I was like 91 minutes before the first pitch. He was never late. He was on time, and he taught me that he said, "You know what, Fish? If you want to be great in this business, you have to bring your best every single day. No matter if you don't feel good, you got a cold, your kids kept you up all night. It doesn't matter. There's no excuses. You bring the best every single day." And no matter how he felt, he did that. And even though he didn't talk a lot about that, I saw it and I saw how he lived and how he did it every day. And that has a huge impact in my career.
Hmm. Balance. Let's talk about balance.
Mm.
Talking with Brett Fischer from the Detroit Lions. Um, I'm guessing, well, I know that players have pressure. They feel pressure. I'm sure you feel pressure to perform. And getting away from the game, getting away from the sideline is something that we all need. You talked about the impact for you because of your wife. What do you like to do to get away from it, to clear and reset?
I started doing this way back in the 1990s. I took my two golden retrievers with me to work. There was no term emotional support dogs at the time. I look back on it, I was the original emotional support person. Those dogs went with me everywhere. And to this day, I still have two golden retrievers. They are so much fun to go home for. But it's really my family. I have 4 boys going home, my wife. That's what keeps me grounded, keeps me balanced. I think the ability to laugh. I try to make every day fun. I need to laugh every day, quite often actually. So I try and bring humor. Not that I'm funny, I just love funny things and keep it light. And that's why, the Ford family has been great here. We just finished the new performance center here, and we redesigned the whole training room. And we
Mm.
brought in a lot of light. We brought in a lot of space. We brought in music to make it an atmosphere that's relaxing and encouraging. And same thing now. We're moving to a lake home. And I told my wife, this is perfect because the last mile of my drive is right along the coast of the water. And I can feel myself go, "Ah," and I just get in that zone leaving. And I sit down going, oh my gosh, that day was crazy, but I'm in this lake home. And now I'm relaxed. So I think it's more the environment you create and the people you surround yourself with.
Looking for a guest speaker for your next event or annual conference? Kraig's message is inspiring and empowering. Visit kraigcanspeak.com to learn more about his topics and find out about his green shoe experience. It's a day your people will talk about long after he's gone. So visit kraigcanspeak.com and mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive your special discount. Now, back to the show.
Okay, I want to get back to something and touch on something, people you surround yourself with. You're with Jared Goff, right? He's the franchise quarterback of an NFL team. Hypothetical, he goes down with an injury, right? And they need him back. I mean, we know backups are a part of the NFL. How do you come across to him as a leader, right? To gain confidence, trust, all that I'm going to get you back. You said get them back better than they were before. But that's pressure, man. I mean, that's pressure on you. You're talking about the franchise guy. How do you not maybe put more into something like that than a different player, treat everybody the same? I'm curious if something like that were to happen.
I think the big thing is developing that relationship before it happens.
Mhm.
When I got here, fortunately for me, I had treated quite a few of his agent's clients. And then he made some phone calls. Obviously, his own agent knew me, but other players in the league, who is this guy? He had a lot of close friends, were my close friends. So when I came and met him, I actually called him my first week on the job in California, and I asked him questions. I said, what can I do to make this better here? He actually had 20 different things already written down that he read to me. And
Wow.
I try and still to this day finish that checklist that he gave me. And I think he appreciated me reaching out to him to say, I care about you enough to say, what do you need? And so if he ever goes down, he knows the fact is that I have the right heart, I have the right mindset to bring him back. I speak to his agent if something, all the time. His trainers that he has in the off season, I speak to them, so they're all in the loop. So he has a familiarity, he has a comfort level with me that I hopefully reestablish. So unfortunately, if something ever does happen, he knows, hey, I can trust this guy. And then meanwhile, I'm going and researching, making sure I have everything in 2024 that we know of in medicine. What can I help in these injuries?
Mm. Brett Fischer, a couple of things before we go. I am very curious about an Emmy Award. An Emmy Award? You won an Emmy Award? What did you win an Emmy Award for?
Sometimes I think like this kid from Philly has an Emmy. I just, what we did was NFL Network produced a thing called NFL Up to create content for high school young kids to do. So we did video work on proper ways to stretch or lift or certain things for your back, or if you have an ankle injury, what would you do? So we did videos for that, and we won an Emmy for that project. I think it was 2013. So it shocked me too. Trust me.
That's all right. You got it. They can't take it away from you. Can't take it away. All right. A couple of things before I let you go. Tracks to Success, inspiring people, inspiring stories. You've shared a lot about yours. And you also took this question kind of away from me because you brought it up earlier, and I want to go back to it. You said that success is not a straight, path northward, if you will. And it's got some bumps and you learn a lot from that. So having said that, you said that, okay, people take something from failures. What else would you tell people? What would your message be before we go to people about trying to find their lane, right? Where they're going to succeed and how they get there?
Okay, I'll start from here. Find out what you like to do. Just write it down. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What makes you focus? Whatever that may be. And then say, well, how can I do that for a job? And how can I help people or something for that, or a situation? How can I do that? And then I think then I'm going to seek out, okay, now I'm getting to the zone of what I want to do for success. Who are the people in that field that maybe I can contact and at least volunteer with? Who can I go ahead and say, who knows more than me in this situation, and get around those people. And if they say no, just keep trying. And then once again, don't be afraid to fail. I mean, you read all about the invention of the light bulb took us, 1,000 times or 10,000 times.
Yeah.
We're all going to fail, but failing is part of the process because it closes a door that maybe shouldn't have been opened. That's okay. And I think sometimes, especially I think in social media, has hurt us because everybody tries to project this perfect image on the social media, and they're so afraid to make a mistake nowadays. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. It's okay, but just keep going. And I think the same thing too is when people say, you want to do what? If you truly believe in your heart, that's what you want to do, man, keep doing it. Keep fighting the fight. And I think the other thing too is a growth mindset. You have to have a growth mindset. If you think you know it all, you don't. And I think those who continue to reinvent themselves or stay current. I mean, look at Pete Carroll. How many years he stayed in coaching for a long time, and he was very relevant. And I always watched him in pregame and how he walked around and talked to the players, but he always had a dynamic offense, defense, and here he's been coaching for I don't know how many years, but he always stayed current, and I think that's so important. And I think the other one, just stay humble. If you stay humble, it encourages you to continue to learn and more and more. And like I said, and surround yourself with great people. Here in Detroit, obviously, great coach, our performance coach, Mike Clark. What a huge impact in my life. I call my big brother. He's been in the NFL for many years, and he does the same thing. He's constantly on the computer. He's been in the NFL forever. He's so up to date. And I always tell him, man, you impact me every day with some of your knowledge bombs. And I sit there going, these are gifts that I'm getting that don't cost me anything. But if I listen and ask him questions, man, what I pull out of Mike Clark is so amazing. And the last thing I think is you have to love the process. Everyone loves the final gift. Everybody loves the trophy, whatever that may be. That's not it. You have to love the process. And that's hard to say sometimes in the NFL season when you get them at 4:00 in the morning, you're grinding, but you always keep that perspective, like, I'm doing this because this is what I love doing, and this is going to lead to this. And the process is where you gotta fight through that, and that's what makes success.
2-minute warning. Let's see if I can get 2 questions in this amount of time. The first one is this. I do leadership communication-based workshops for corporations, for individuals, helping them learn to own a room, present the best of themselves, build their brand, and not just make a paycheck, but make a difference, okay? So I'm bringing you into my workshop, and I want you to talk to people about brand. Now, I always say that personal and professional brand is always under construction, just like a company. What would you tell people about the importance of building a brand? You have clearly built one for yourself. You're an entrepreneur as well with a business. How valuable is brand?
Brand is everything. I think that what people see you do and say is your brand, but that all comes from inside. So I don't purposely do my brand. I purposely be me, and I try and be authentic me. And it gets back to my why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? For me, is to love and help heal people so I can honor God by helping them experience their dreams and their goals. And once you have that to me, that whole part of what they see is coming from what you have inside. So for me, it's just focusing on my why, and the other things take care of themselves.
Last thing. Let's close with this. The Lions would love to win the Super Bowl. That would be the capper. That would be amazing for everybody involved. Your career and where you are right now, your success. What's the Super Bowl for Brett Fischer? What would be the ultimate achievement for you at this point?
That's a great question. And I actually have thought about this. And for me, because of what I talked about today, I'm like this person who got poured in by all these different people who are experts in the field. I think my Super Bowl is to have people who I work with and come in contact with, especially physical therapists and athletic trainers and doctors, that I can kind of impart some of the things that I learned to them. And not just medically, but how I approach people. So if I'm able to do those things and share all the experiences that I had to other people and to see them succeed would be my Super Bowl.
Legacy is a big thing. And you've left a little bit with this podcast, making it better. Brett, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
No, thank you. And I really enjoyed listening to your podcast. I listened to many of them. So it's an honor to be on your show. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Time now for our closing segment. We call it Getting Ahead. My thoughts on helping you find your track to success. And it's brought to you by Ahead. If you're looking for the best in headwear, Ahead has you covered. From a robust collegiate collection with more than 30 universities to choose from, to styles featuring golf legends Palmer, Nicklaus, and Sorenstam, to fits for all 6 teams in the new TGL Golf League, visit AheadUSAShop.com. That's AheadUSAShop.com and use code TTS at checkout. Receive 20% off your purchase. That's AheadUSAShop.com and code TTS for 20% off. Well, I really enjoyed that conversation with Brett. He's a trainer, but the bigger word that I heard during our conversation was actually the word performance. So when it comes to getting ahead and finding your success, those 2 words are big. Performance is one I'll get to in just a second. Let's start with training. Heck, we all need it. So I ask you to ask yourself, am I training to become better at what it is that I do? Am I taking courses? Am I advancing myself? Am I putting new things into my toolbox to help me succeed at a higher level? Training is big, and it should never stop if we want to become the best version of ourselves. Then the word performance. Now, you think of performing on a stage and being in front of an audience, but performance is all based on preparation. How much do we prepare to be ready to perform at optimum level? No matter what it is we do, ask yourself if you're standing out. And can we make a difference in what it is that we do by performing better and actually uniquely different than other people that do the same thing that we do? Brett, well, he helps professional athletes through training and performing at their highest level. I've got workshops, and that's what we work on with people in the corporate world and their organizations, training them to become the best version of themselves, building a bigger brand, and then performing at the highest level to make a difference, not just for their company, but for themselves as well. So my thought to you, as you've listened today, is to find some training and think about preparation to become the best performer that you can be. Do that, and your tracks to success will become a whole lot easier. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. I'm Kraig Kann. Until next time, let's stay connected.
Don't forget to subscribe to the show for more great interviews and Kraig's thoughts on reaching your highest personal and professional summit. Find it wherever you get your podcasts and on the Kraig Kann YouTube channel and KraigCannSpeak.com.